Welcome, everybody. How's it going? This is Jamie Janover here from Resonance Science Foundation, filling in for our usual host, Marshall Lefferts, who can't join us today. But I'm happy to host this Resonance Academy faculty question and answer session where you guys who are contributing members of Resonance Science can join us on Zoom and ask questions of our faculty members. Today, we're joined by Sir William Brown and Adam Apollo and Dr. Inez. How do you pronounce your last name, Inez?
Urdaneta.
Urdaneta. I try.
Not that bad.
And Marshall's off doing some adventures and has some exciting stuff going on, which is good. And it means that now we are a little bit smaller group today, and maybe we're going to get to a bunch of questions. I love going through kind of like a lightning round kind of situation so that we can get to as many questions as we can. Sometimes some of these questions are very involved and detailed, which is awesome. You guys can ask us any question in the universe because unified field theory covers everything in the universe. So pretty much all topics are open. For those who are joining us on social media, on Facebook, welcome. You can check out the contributing member situation here with Resonance Science, going to resonancescience.org. And this is one of the many things that the contributing members get, including access to the first elective of all the courses in the Academy. And Adam and William on the call here have courses, and Inez has worked very hard on continuing on the free course that we have. It's the free Unified Science course. Everybody's welcome to take that for free at resonancescience.org. And it's Nassim Haramein's 30 years of research encapsulated into a really detailed and succinct online course with 6 modules, soon to be 7 and 8 modules as the new papers and summaries of older papers come online, which should be very soon. So I just wanted to open it up, and usually we have each of our Academy faculty say hello and a little intro statement. So why don't we start with Inez, who is joining us from, are you at Taurus Tech?
Yeah.
Nice. She's at the home base.
Yeah.
Southern
I just
California.
arrived. Yeah, I arrived this week on Monday. So,
Awesome.
and yesterday you just started having the briefing of the new paper to come, and it was out of this world. It is all so amazing. I'm so happy. Oh,
Excellent.
well, so yeah, so with that briefing and downloading, and then, well, finishing Model 7, as you all know, I think it will be launched as soon as possible. We're just refining some last minute corrections, and yeah, well, that would be basically my news for the time being. I'm very happy to be here and sharing with the community here in Institute. Yeah, so.
Well, excellent. William, do you want to dovetail on that? Because were you on the same meeting with Inez and Nassim and Marshall?
Yeah, I got the download yesterday. So Nassim is nearing completion. Nassim and Dr. Olivier are nearing completion of their latest paper. And it is certainly one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. It is a veritable user's guide to the universe. So this is a very exciting time. And I've begun just working right away on applying some of these entropy mechanics solutions to the Planck plasma that they've come up with, and applying it to the biology. So looking at the biophysics. So this is going to be a lot of really, I think, insightful research on how these unified physics that are operating across physical systems in general are operating specifically within the biological system to produce what we call life and other aspects of that, like consciousness and awareness. So it's a very exciting time.
Excellent. How's it going, Adam?
Doing well. Snow's melting a bit today. We got another 6 inches up here in Boulder, and it's beautiful though. Looks like sparkling diamonds outside. Feeling good. All of my projects are rocking it, moving forward, doing some really great work, getting some new physics downloads as well around the torsion elements as you move towards the pole of the proton, creating different wavelengths based on the angle off of the central pole of the sphere of the proton, which is looking like it relates to a bit of Robert Grant's work as well. And right now I'm doing a lot of cross-referencing research with some of the right triangulation curvature as you go from the pole to the equator of a sphere, and looking at how the angle is related to a potential wavelength coming off of that vector. So got some exciting stuff in the works, but it's still in early phases. So as it gets a little bit more fleshed out, I'll come forward and talk about it some more, and possibly put something out for people to read and look at.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. Yeah, and Robert Edward Grant, one of our other Resonance Academy faculty, has been prolifically busy, coming up with new discoveries, fundamental geometries and things. His resonance talk is really good. You could check it out on the website. Actually, it's the best place to watch it is on our YouTube page. We have a series of resonance talks that came out from the resonance retreat in 2019. William's got a great talk on there, and his course, Big Questions, is super detailed and involved, very extensive course. Maybe William could talk about that a little bit later. But these resonance talks are great. Nassim Haramein has one that's on there as well, and Marshall Efforts. So I encourage you to just check out all those resonance talks. Before we jump in, I just wanted to remind the folks that are on Zoom that when you're in the chat, you have to change that little blue button to say panelists and attendees so that you are speaking to everybody in the group and not just us, because it's set usually by default to panelists for some reason. So just a heads up. Oh yeah, you guys are getting it. Okay, cool. And then if you have questions, put the questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat, because our panelists are looking at the Q&A for questions. And panelists, if you see anything you want to grab, you can, mark it as you're going to answer it and stuff. This is my first time actually hosting one of these, so I'm going to be practicing trying to bring people on live. If they want to turn on their video, they can and be on. And if you just don't want to be on live at all with your audio or video, that's totally fine. The question can just get answered from reading it out of the Q&A section. But if you do want to come on, that's awesome. Know that you will be live on Facebook. So it's up to you guys. So with that being said, Inez, do you have a question in there that you see that you want to grab?
Yeah, I was just reading the one about the chakras. I would like to address a little bit about it from the perspective I'm familiarized with. That would be the second question, I think. Yeah, from Darius Kaufman. So I don't know if this person wants to jump on the call.
Darius usually comes on. He's been on many times. I'll see if I can find him. Let's see, attendees. Here we go. So you want to read the question?
Yeah. So is there a connection between the chakras and toroidal black hole dynamics? So the chakras have been described in many different ways, from rotating wheels and geometric forms to light frequency, color, sound frequency. I'm envisioning a double torus system like a galaxy with energy entering and exiting at specific points, and a black hole in the center. Perhaps there might even be phi ratio mathematics governing the relative frequencies of the different chakra centers. as with the fractal universes within the multiverse. I'd love to hear some thoughts and ideas about this. What brought my attention is the fact that here, being in Mexico, I got to meet Dr. Maria Esther del Rio. She's a chemist, and now she's like on her late 70s, but she was the one who found that there was a huge amount of magnetite in the position in these glands that we would call the chakras. So I found that pretty interesting because this was like one of the first, like, let's say, biochemical confirmations, biological biochemical confirmations of the fact that there is a very particular concentration of magnetite in these particular sites and glands that we would call chakras. And that's really important because, as you know, magnetite is a magnetic element. And the magnetic fields have particularly these double torus dynamics that you're mentioning here. So this is the link, let's say, from the biophysics to what the dynamics of the fields, of the electromagnetic fields that are embedded in this double torus dynamics. So that would be my comment on the matter. So I guess
I'll jump in on that one too.
I'm sure Adam will jump in.
Obviously, the chakras are one of my favorite subjects. So, yeah, it's, if you start to consider that every electromagnetic vortex, and by the way, the chakras are definitely measurable electromagnetic vortexes, along with all of the other nadis of the body, the different meridian points all have measurable electromagnetic vortices around them. And if we look at all vortices in the electromagnetic field as being, you know, related to scalar dynamics between Planck scale, PSU actually in co-moving energies, then we can always sort of point to black hole dynamics as causing those vortices, because every proton is a black hole, right? And so anytime you have a larger wave field vortice, it's due to an aggregation of combined vortices of a series of protons that are in coherence with each other in some way. Meaning that they're the general kind of molecular alignment of all the protons together is affecting the electromagnetic field in a certain way. And then aggregations of those molecules are all operating in conjunction with each other, co-moving PSU and basically generating spin or movement in the field from all of their co-moving energies operating together. And this gets really interesting. I think it's a very, very, you know, it's a very subtle effect. Like there's a very subtle linkage that's going on, probably through entanglement between parts of the molecules, through each of the protons connecting together, and then molecular structures connecting together that are, I think, probably at a scalar level, also resonating at the cellular level. So the cell is also sort of ringing like a bell, and the cell is then in turn further, and the tissue layers are then further like rippling the strength of that vortex, which is also why when the cellular matrix or the cellular or tissue structure gets bound up or contracted, the coherence level and entanglement coherence between all of the protons within that field also gets dampened, because it needs to resonate at each scale up in order for the propagation to occur. And then if we take that and we put that over here and we say, okay, well, then what's really happening at the center of, say, like neutron stars or like super large or super massive black holes? Well, in their case, the protons are like so massively coherent and so aligned and compressed into a perfect geometric field structure that they're all actually operating like a single proton. And so the tissue of the star, so to speak, right, if we could use that term, extending it from the biological analysis, the tissue of the star itself is in super high coherence. And that extremely high resonant coherence going through that structure is then propagating into space-time a massive expression of those electromagnetic vortices. as well as, of course, space-time curvature and the gravitational fields that generates. So in brief, I would just say that absolutely, the chakras in the body are absolute expressions of black hole dynamics in combination with resonance dynamics in the biological system.
Great.
How's
Thank
that,
you.
Darius?
Yeah,
You're
that's
welcome,
great.
Darius.
That's great. I was also curious because, with the color frequency and the sound frequency that are normally specified for the chakras, how that would relate to everything coming out of the toroidal dynamics and everything. I mean, I'm sure there's so much stuff to unpack there and discover. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what I'm working on right now, is how the angular momentum based on the collective spin of the PSU, depending on where that angle is going to determine the wavelength of the size of the wave that's coming off from the co-moving PSU, which I think is related to the colors. But I haven't solved that one fully yet. But I'm trying to tie together the geometric dynamics of each of the chakras that I present in the unified harmonic matrix work that I do with the PSU proton dynamics. That's like the next stage, is linking up those geometries, and then that also links to the color frequencies and harmonics.
Right. And then when you have color, there's always associated sound as well. And that was sort of a side thought that I had too, that if we start to get into real numbers at some point with all of that, a lot of times people talk about, the root chakra being C and all of this, and no one ever specifies Pythagorean tuning. They're just talking about the letters, and people create objects, like crystal bowls that sound these notes of the chakras supposedly, but they're all in, A440 modern tuning. So it would be really interesting to dive, because all of this must tie into the work that you're doing, but also what Robert Grant is doing, and all the Pythagorean numbers. So I'm sure that I just intuitively, it has to be.
Yeah, you're on the good trail, man. Thanks for your question. Thanks for joining us, Darius.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Darius. Good to see you.
Okay.
There's a question I would like to address. It's what from Anton Broadhurst. Yeah, he's got no votes yet, but I just thought I would.
It's all right.
Address it. Yeah.
It's a good question.
Yeah. So maybe he wants to come into the light.
Okay. You want to read out that question?
Yeah. So
let's not belabor the issue of getting them on video. Let's just kind of keep it moving. Come on. Okay. We got this.
Let's get this. Okay. So what forces? And so Anthony Broadhurst asks, what forces or methods are you finding most effective to disturb the vacuum Planck field? Okay, so I would say, hi, Anton.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, welcome. Okay, so I would say more than disturb, I would say to interact, no? To interface.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I had the right word.
Yeah, to interface with the Planck field, right? Because we want to access, let's say, that field of coherence, because it's extremely coherent at the Planck level, which is something that we have a kind of misunderstanding. We have the feeling, because of the mainstream approach that says that vacuum fluctuations are extremely random and they're completely, deorganized. But so it seems that it's not the case at all. It is completely opposite. It is the source, in fact, of a very strong order and coherence.
Yeah.
So taking that into account, every time we tap into the vacuum, we have to do it in following certain specific conditions and ratios, because what the holographic law and model shows is that this happens, the coupling with the vacuum and the sources of mass and forces and all of that emerge from the vacuum occur at very specific ratios.
Sure.
So so these ratios are very important, and you have to reach them in using mostly angular momentum. So you have to induce some kind of spin. So the idea is to couple to the vacuum through spin. that would be the most effective way to, and the most direct way, because
Right.
that's like talking their language. So if you talk the language of the vacuum field, which is spin, this vorticial dynamics, this
Right.
and through angular momentum, then you would reach that coupling with the vacuum field.
So I guess then with spin, would it be sound, magnetics, light, different types of
Different.
frequencies, all of
Yeah.
them combined, different curvatures? You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is, all right, so you have a crystal, right, that has angles that obviously interacts with the vacuum. That's one example. There's got to be other things that you guys are working on, or I'm just wondering if there's other things besides angles or materials, or like, let's say, for instance, magnet or sound, or have you had any success in interacting with the vacuum, other forces other than, let's say, angles and crystals, like
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Sure. We're doing the plasma device at this moment. It's being developed. It works as a function of a magnetic field, and just because you have to make the plasma is a charged gas. It's a ionized gas, so you have to make it spin, and you make it spin through electromagnetic fields. But the thing is that, there's another concept which is really important, and that's the one concerning resonance. So the resonance is something that's mainly driven by, of course, frequency, but also by shape. So when we talk about the crystal and these angles, we're basically talking about the shape of the crystal. So the shape of the crystal, it is important because its dimensions, which have been calculated exactly to fractally arrive to the size it has, those dimensions are crucial. And so the dimensions and the shapes will determine let's say, the main frequency, the main resonant frequency of the entity, in this case, the crystal.
Okay.
So these are various, so you can approach the problem through different angles. So resonance and shape, and it is very important because, as you know, from cymatics, the cymatic the beautiful experiments you have, the shape of the container, it's crucial. I mean, you have to have some confinement. You have to have some volume confined in a certain region of space,
Right.
so that you can have this resonant condition. So
would you say that maybe certain shapes like rectangulars or cylinders would be more beneficial than other?
it depends on what you want to achieve with that. It depends on, it depends. It's like a trial and error, you have to like, it seems to me that you have something in mind, like you have some prototype or something you're working on.
Yeah, I have a patent on enhancing CBD with sound and light. Or it's actually called,
beautiful.
the patent is energy enhanced and cannabinoids. So I have a couple pieces of technology that I built. And then I use some, existing technologies that are out there with, like, ultrasonic sound vibration machines, and then whatever. So I noticed some differences. I don't have like I haven't been able to buy like a light spectrometer and do some of the testings that I'd like to be able to do. I'm doing this all on my own. So I don't have the ability to do some of the testing that I'd like to be able to do, but I know that there's something there, and I try to study as much as possible to do experiments, but it does cost, like, in order to manufacture a crystal or a box or a laser or anything, all of that is somewhat expensive, and then to run tests, and I'm doing everything myself, so I'm just working slowly by slowly. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, it sounds a great idea. It really resonates.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the work. I appreciate you guys spending your time here and answering the questions and putting all the information that you guys do out all the time. It's amazing.
Our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Yeah.
Do either of you guys want to chip in on that one, or?
I was thinking William might want to jump on, vacuum effects to magnify, growth and crystallization effects of CBD, et cetera. Is there anything you want to add on that, William?
Well, so, methods by which you can couple with the Planck field. My main area of investigation into this is with instances where that's occurring in the biological system. And so, as Inez was saying, one of the most efficient and strongest coupling mechanisms that you're going to be able to find is with spin. And there's several reasons for that. For instance, one is that with the spin, you can induce coherence. So if you can consider the Planck plasma, the quantum vacuum in a random state where all the different spin orientations are kind of randomly ordered. The moment that you introduce a spin component into that, all the directions, all the spin orientations will align. And so you almost instantly get a coherence in the field. And to a large extent, what matter is, what a particle is a sustained vortex, a sustained vorticular pattern of that Planck plasma, of that quantum vacuum field, energetic field. So in the biological system, at the molecular level, there are, in macromolecular level, there are some key areas where you can see very interesting spin dynamics at play. So one of the most obvious areas where you could be having a spin dynamic that's coupling to the vacuum energy information structure, is in the mitochondria. So the mitochondria is where the cell is producing energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And the way that it's doing that is by producing a proton gradient. So it generates a proton plasma inside the mitochondria, in the inner membrane space in the mitochondria. And so, we're talking extremely high energy dynamics in this cellular compartment.
Right.
Now, this proton gradient is being used to drive a nanomolecular motor called the ATP synthase. And this is a literal Brownian motor. So it's got a shaft and spinning rotary components, F0 and F1 rotary components on it. And it uses the flow of protons. So this is generating a large current, actually. The flow of protons against a gradient to spin. And some of the recent calculations that we did is showing that at particular proton concentration gradients, this thing can spin as fast as 60,000 RPM. Like for comparison, a jet engine spins at like 10,000 RPM.
Yeah.
So this is spinning extremely quickly. And you've got a flow of current, a flow of charge through it. You have a capacitance, resonance with the size of the inner membrane space. And as I also mentioned, the importance of resonance in this mechanism. So this is probably a system that life has developed that couples it to the vacuum. So it's probably we're running the calculations to fully delineate the mathematics, but this is an area where life has invented a over unity energy engine. So it's possible even to take that and with biomimicry,
Right.
reverse engineer it,
Yeah.
and use that for application. Yeah.
If
VR
I
for the
could,
energy.
real quick, there's a lot of work being done with water recently. I've heard you guys be studying water and the amazing information transformative properties it has, and like the medium that it's able to work, like interact with, or at least the information it's able to carry, or how water is very important, right? I've heard you guys mention water. I'm wondering, all of those properties sound wonderful. And however, when I'm working with CBD, it's derived from an oil. So I'm wondering if if there's any differences. I know I'm sure there's lots of differences, but are there any similarities between waters and oils? Maybe, possibly because of the fat contents, or if there's there too many fat contents of within a certain medium? Would it be counterproductive?
Well, you can have health benefits associated with oil that are apart from the kind of health benefits that you get from water.
Yeah.
The similarities between the two are a little bit tenuous, just because water is a polar solvent, and fats or lipids are nonpolar.
Right. Right.
Liquids. So water is the universal solvent.
Right.
Because of its polar nature, and fats, oils, because they're non-polar, they only act as good solvents for hydrophobic molecules like CBD.
Okay.
Yeah. So, your body, the biological system, utilizes both of these, though. So if you're talking about the cell, at the simplest level, you have a lipid membrane.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fat layer. I guess you could call it fat. It's phospholipid membrane, and inside that you have the atomically ordered aqueous matrix, water.
Right.
And so what kind of lipids you put into the body is extremely important for health. Extremely important, because they're going to be affecting that lipid bilayer, which comprises a large portion of the tissues of the body.
Thank you so much. I know there's a lot of other questions. I really appreciate it. That was amazing.
Thanks, Anton. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
you
for being here.
Best of luck with your work.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Adam, what do you got? You got something in there?
Yeah, sure, man. Always happy to take one. There's kind of two inquiries that are related, that are topics that I'm usually willing to dive into in a unified physics academy, because of my interest in work that sort of edges on the metaphysics of life and consciousness and etc. So one of them is from Jeff Colebrook, and he says, "It has been stated here that spirituality is the science we have not figured out yet. With the advancement of science in the proof of reincarnation, most notably Dr. Ian Stevenson of University of Virginia, among others, would anyone like to expand the science of unified physics to explain science of reincarnation?" The related question is from Lonnie Gibbs, which says, if indeed the quantum field is the field of all possibilities and includes the Akashic records where there's no space and or time, then it meets my understanding of spirituality. Also, this field is where all is connected and all is one. So for me, this awakening gives me a strong reinforcement of my present belief. How do you feel? A curious question to just ask us how we feel about that. But I will speak to the sort of deeper details of both of these questions from my current state of understanding and my my work. So we'll start by talking about space-time as an Akashic memory structure. And when we look at the memory network, as William and Nassim put it in their paper on the space-time memory network, we can start to see and establish that everything is an information storage capacitor. In particular, protons are information storage capacitors, and there's a connectivity between all the proton storage nodes in the network through the Planck spherical unit field, which Wheeler has described as potentially being, composed of micro wormhole networks, right? And so from our perspective, when you put those pieces together, you start to see this understanding that the space-time that we're embedded in is this extremely powerful quantum computer that's all hooked up together through faster than light communication systems, i.e. wormhole networks, which literally form the fabric of space-time itself. The threads of the fabric of space are, in this case, potentially defined as wormholes. And that's literally the way that I like to think of it. And so this, within this field of information storage, it's also important to point out that in my own work, looking at the proton, I found it extremely useful to recognize that in a single proton, you have 10 to the 60th Planck spherical units embedded in each proton. And that's a gargantuan number, by the way. 10 with 60 zeros after it is the number of Planck spherical units. And it happens to be that the number of Planck seconds that have passed in the entire age of the universe also happens to be 10 to the 60th. Now, that's a gargantuan coincidence if it's a coincidence. Otherwise, we might actually begin to assess the idea that perhaps, just as Nassim has suggested to some extent that the proton is a mirror to the universal mass energy through the mass energy contained within a proton. What I'm saying is that the proton may also be a mirror of the universe in the scale of its storage of moments of time. In other words, every Planck second that has passed in the universe is one of the PSU in every proton in the universe, so that all protons in the universe are actually growing one PSU at a time, one Planck time unit at a time, in conjunction, keeping that tie together. Okay, so that's all the external stuff, right? That's all the stuff that we're saying, okay, we're analyzing this sort of fabric of space-time, etc. But we are made of that, right? We are in that. We are a composition of that. We're a coherent, self-contained sort of unit of that. And so within our structural, physical plane of existence and biological plane, we are holding the memory and expression of the universe to some extent within every proton within our bodies. And we're also storing the data from every experience that we have. Our DNA is capturing information from the environment, which is sort of entering temporary storage in the space of junk DNA, so to speak, which is actually just not non-hard coding DNA, which then feeds into the hard coded DNA that we leave for our lineage, right? And so this is all the kind of physics and biology of it. But when you get to the question of, well, what about you? And what is it about you that makes you different from the particular combination of an egg and sperm from your parents? What about you makes you different than the specific genetic codex of your parental lineages that are forming you? Because in reality, you are different than that. You extend beyond that. You are more than that. And in my experience, this is where we kind of get to that edge of biology and begin to be able to point to the journey of the soul and the sort of essence of consciousness in itself. Now, to discuss the nature of the soul is certainly outside of the boundaries of our role as a unified physics, science organization, perhaps, but maybe not. In any case, we can say that as soon as we cross that edge to the space where we're talking about the nature of the being itself, of the soul itself, of the consciousness expressing itself into space-time, where we've now kind of exited the realm of physics and we've entered the realm of spirituality and metaphysics purely. I would say that from my own work and experience that the soul is journeying through time, storing information as above, so below, in the same way that a universe does. We are a whole universe of experience aggregated through time, through our journey in the universe. And we're absolutely connected to everything. And we are still totally individualized in this fantastically beautiful way. And that individual stream of the personal memory storage, perhaps at a higher plane of existence, maybe the astral plane or at a causal catheric plane level, we are storing all of that data through all of the memories of all the time, of every moment that we are experiencing us as us in relationship to everything else. And that is then ending up actually encoding itself into our DNA and into our genetics and into our biological structure every time we choose to incarnate through the little fusion of an egg and sperm cell. And we're growing, this incredible cellular matrix to reflect that greater universal information storage that we are as a soul in the beautiful compacted little information universe of our physical bodies. So that's my riff on that one, guys.
I love hearing that. I just love hearing you talk about that. Just listening to the flow of that is just amazing. And of course, what you got me was the time thing, because that's some of the question was like time, because, metaphysically, they forward, backwards, we're reincarnating from the future and the past, and at the same time. And maybe. Well, this someone say that, I heard that say.
Yeah. Well, that's when I can speak to. I'll pass it to you in a sec, William. Like if your incarnation is non-local from a time standpoint, meaning that you could incarnate in the past after having an incarnation in the future, right? Then there suddenly becomes a massive logical break that occurs in temporality, because in the experience of your existence now, by having the memory of the experiences that you had in prior incarnations, which I do for one, I was, for example, someone handed me a katana, a real katana, and I just knew how to use it. And I was able to just move it around my body and express it. And that memory and the physiological memory that I brought into this form from the experience of having the knowledge of using that particular sword over 30 years of a life in a prior time, it is a causal result. The actual act of me doing that practice resulted in the effect of me being able to remember that practice now, right? And there's a direct link there. If I didn't have already had that experience, I wouldn't have the memory of that experience now. So while the soul can be seen perhaps as a free of time in a sense, when engaged with the flow of space-time, in other words, the universal intersection, we are dealing with causal, relationships and temporal relationships in memory and things like that.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but on the time thing too, just that all people that experience near-death experience or different kind of information when they're in the Akashic record field lose a sense of time. And I was just wondering, yeah, but you're talking about the Planck time, what about subplanckian time as a place where some of that information is stored?
Yeah. I mean, that's that's open for discussion. I mean, even just getting to the storage of the PSU is something that we're not there yet. You know, we're just getting the storage capacity of the proton, you know, at this point, just starting to understand that, it seems like. Yeah, in any case, you know, is it possible that there's a level where simultaneity is held as an information structure where everything that's ever going to happen in the future is already imprinted? Sure, I can say that's a possibility. But what I can definitely say for sure, at least based on the research and work I've done so far, is that everything in the past is stored in the moment of the now. Everything that's ever happened before is absolutely imprinted on space-time of the now. The entire memory of all history is in the now. And that to me is more of the beauty and the wisdom of the Akashic, whereas the future is a little bit more flexible than that, right? Because there's a probability in the light cone, like there's momentum to things. If you're driving at 60 miles an hour, you can't suddenly turn 90 degrees unless you've got a starship that can pull that off. But in general, on a car, you know, with wheels, you've got momentum and gravity and mass and all that stuff. And there's a certain amount of turn that you can do at that speed, you know, and you can't go beyond that. So like there's a momentum to our movement, and we still have the choice of how much we can turn the ship within that light cone of possibility.
Well, there's the access to the past, you know, you have near-death experiences or et cetera, you have the access to past life reviews or to your own life reviews. You know, all the information, every bit of the information is available. So that's where they line up, what you're saying and what all the metaphysics scientists, I guess you call them metaphysical scientists, are saying the same thing, that there is that information that is available. Mm-hmm. And part of past life review and all that stuff. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you.
William, did you want to jump in on that?
Jeff. Yeah, go ahead, William.
Yeah. So one of the things from a unified physics perspective on this is that there is no such thing as past or future. So in a unified physics perspective, all space-time frames are occurring simultaneously. So you know, what we think of as the past is just a space-time frame that's occurring right now, just not in your local vicinity, not in your local space-time coordinate. So when you talk about reincarnation, you're developing a very kind of linear perspective on this. And actually, you know, trying to frame it in a model of an actual linear flow of time, which fundamentally doesn't exist. So the idea that you have a past life, you die, and then you come back and are reborn, while you know that might be an experience, fundamentally that isn't what's happening. You know, our linear perspective of a flow of time is very much kind of a contrived result of our unique position within the universe, being in the solar system on a planet that has a very specific periodicity in its rotation and orbit around the sun and everything. So I did, though, you mentioned more than a couple of times this experience of timelessness. And, that's really where this connectivity network is being formed that gives you access to other space-time coordinates that may or may not be your specific world line. So this connectivity network is what we describe in the Unified Space Memory Network as the micro wormhole network, which Adam described as the fabric, if you will, the interweaving fabric of space itself. Within this connectivity network of the micro wormhole network, it really is a trans-temporal dimension, in that your time vector can flow in any direction that you want. So it is fundamentally timeless. So in terms of unified physics, what we would call the soul is this connectivity network of space. This what in my paper, the unified physics and the entanglement nexus of awareness, the soul is the entanglement nexus of awareness. And the reason why it's called an entanglement network is that these wormholes that are connecting different space-time coordinates, making multiply connected space-time frames, that is entanglement. So when you have entanglement of two particles where they seem to respond irregardless of time or space, non-locally, the reason they do that is that they're connected via a wormhole that is transtemporal, in which information exchange occurs quasi-instantaneously. Now, there are specific conditions in which this kind of quantum entanglement is occurring in the biological system. One of the most pertinent or germane to this particular topic is DNA replication. The mechanism of DNA replication, which is semi-conservative replication. So every time a gamete is produced that is going to be a sperm or egg cell to create a new organism, the DNA must replicate itself. And so this replication involves production of daughter cells from a mother cell. So you have two strands of the DNA that are going to come apart into single strands. They're entangled. Now, I just should maybe even mention, though, that the mathematics for the entanglement of the DNA strand have been worked out. There's papers published on this, for instance, by a physicist, Dr. Vidal, who does a lot of work with multi-body entanglement. He has a paper where they've worked out, the mathematical coupling of the DNA as an entanglement network. So it separates into these two strands, and each one of those strands serves as a template to make a new complete genome. That entanglement is conserved. So, you have two strands coming from your parents to make your genome. That entanglement is conserved. And you have a entanglement network going to your parents. They each have two parents. So there's an entanglement network of 4 people. Go back another generation, 8 people, 16, 32, 64. You go back 300 years and you have 32,000 plus ancestors. That's just 300 years ago. That's your entanglement network over a tiny fraction of time. So, I mean, it doesn't take much time before your entanglement network is veritably every single person on the planet. So the information streams that you have accessible to you span a very large geography across space and time. So, you know, when you're accessing information from a past life, you know, it's a life that's occurring right now in a different space-time coordinate that you're not locally accessing, but you can non-locally access it through your entanglement connection, your quantum wormhole connection to that life. And so, you know, that's kind of a oneness of it all. Adam.
I have a question for you, William.
Sure.
Related to this, which is we can scientifically now measure the effects that we have on other objects that we're entangled with, right? The effect of consciousness on random number generators. We can measurably, we can see the effects happening between a child and a mother, non-locally across distance, right? This implies the ability for choice or will to issue energy through the wormhole network, right, to have an effect on the other side, right? And so my question to you is that if what you're saying is entirely accurate and true, and this is an open, curious question for me, by the way, right? Then the trans-temporal wormhole networks entanglement that you're saying that we have with all space and all time, past and future, would suggest that we would be able to then issue through the same act of will, the same act of an emotion, the change on a specific event or randomish kind of structure and or electromagnetic field, et cetera, in the past, in the exact same way that we can right now in the present on any other object that we are, you know, radiantly experiencing with, like through the wormhole entanglement network. Now the kind of byline to that question is to say, if that's true, couldn't you then affect through this transtemporal wormhole network the specific sperm that would meet an egg in the past? And if that happened, what would be the result? Or changing, for example, the tiny little electrical charge that sets off the timing of the change of a traffic light, that when that traffic light did say, you know, it turned red, the other one turned green, the cars went, and a car got smashed into by another car and it killed one of your family members. The ability to transtemporally affect that small, tiny little electromagnetic switch, which we've proven to be possible right now in the present, would suggest that you could literally affect in that moment the temporal circumstance of that car being smashed by another car, and your family member would no longer be dead. So how do you resolve that particular conundrum and paradox from this standpoint that you're presenting?
Yeah, great line of questioning on that. Yeah, because you know, that's probably one of the most exciting aspects about viewing time in this way, is that you have constitutive communication occurring between all of these space-time coordinates, all these space-time frames, some of which we say are in the future and some of which we say are in the past, but that's a very earth-based way of viewing things, because it's all occurring simultaneously, instantaneously, as one now moment. Absolutely, you know, in the same way that you could make an adjustment now to change a future outcome, when you make that adjustment, you also simultaneously change past events. That is always constitutively occurring.
Okay, so pause right there. So
okay.
just to translate what you said so that I make sure I understand and that everybody's listening understand.
Okay.
What you're saying is that when someone would choose to say change the traffic light in the past, right? That there is a simultaneity in that occurrence, meaning that the traffic light would have already changed in the past, and you would have already known that decision would have already been supposedly going to be made in the future, meaning that in that case, there's a fixed relationship. If what you're saying there is true, meaning that the event in the future is already predestined because it's connected to everything that's already happened in the past. And in that sense, there's no choice. Correct me if I'm wrong, and please elaborate or continue if it makes sense to.
Yeah. Well, so, the question of whether you could have the kind of influence to change the timing of a traffic light, though, that is a little bit of a problem within the Kendonkin experiment. One of the reasons that we probably wouldn't have to practically reconcile that kind of situation is that it is probably extremely impossible to have that level of influence that is going to have that degree of change.
But hold on there, because I've absolutely experienced changing traffic lights in my current stream of time. And I've also had plenty of experiences of changing random number systems. All that's something that's been, a deep and major part of my life. And Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Group's work on random number generators has definitively proven we could change it. So regardless if we use the specific example of a traffic light, let's say the traffic light's timing is set on a switch that's a random number generator, to use a mental example. And the random number generator, we know, proven, we can affect a change in it. And now we're just placing that random number generator and that traffic light in an event that's already occurred, in which you've already grieved your family member, you've already buried them, you've already had the funeral, everybody's already gone through all the emotional momentum of all that experience. And now what you're saying is that the transtemporal capacity to change that moment in the past is available to change that random number generator, which then would suggest that the entire causal stream of events after that would then be changed instantly.
Yeah, but so, you have to deal with the entanglement network of every single event cascading from that. That's the reason why it becomes exceedingly improbable with that particular space-time coordinate is that its entanglement network relationship to you is vast. So you're not just changing the timing of the traffic light in that instance. You'd actually have to be having a lot of large-scale macroscopic influences.
It reminds me of blockchain.
Yeah.
Where you can't just change one little thing. If you're going to change something, you got to change the entire blockchain.
The entire
So,
block.
yeah, you can't just turn down the sun, Nassim likes to say. Like, if you're too hot and you're like, sun, can you turn it down? Then the Eskimos are going, wait, don't do that. So like, you can change stuff if it's relative to your scale and your time. And it's only a small little change. Like, you can change pixels, but if you want to change the entire movie of the history of the universe, you're changing too many things all at once. You would need, like, for example, every human on the planet all at the same time, all jump at the same time. Maybe you could make a little bit of stuff happen. If you just jump by yourself and no one else jumps, you're going to like squash an ant maybe, but you're not going to move the earth or turn down the sun or anything like large scale, right? And before we get too far, Lonnie, you've been on here very patiently this whole time. I want to make sure that Lonnie gets a chance to like chime in and make sure your question was answered. But I just wanted to throw that in. It reminds me of blockchain that you're changing locally. You can't just change the entire space memory network at once, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to address that too, because we're talking, my understanding, we're talking about the field where there's all possibilities. So I can't say that, it can or cannot happen. And I think that's where you gentlemen are working. You're finding that out. You're in a different dimension as I look at it. And I think we're learning more to communicate with that dimension. like I believe Tesla did, but there's many others that are gaining that now. I mean, you got Dr. Bruce Lipton when it comes to biology that's going to explain a lot of this. Greg Braden is another one. You could go on and on and on with these, I call maybe advanced science, new scientists, you know, and it all ties into metaphysics, and it's been explained to me too that I can't explain to you, but this is even brought up in ancient civilizations, and they're recognizing that now. This knowledge is nothing new, but yet it is coming out. And I've come to believe too that everything is consciousness. Even Mother Earth is consciousness. And right now, my belief is that we can do whatever we can do to raise our consciousness. They say, you know, it only takes maybe 3% of the world, and we will change. And we're in dramatic times right now. We're in a crisis. I don't know if you guys, we're getting off of science, I guess, but if you study spiral dynamics and some of those other consciousness theories, if you want to call it that, we're ready to really change and rapidly. And I see that because I see science coming right hand in hand with spirituality. I see it for all my reading, and it's wonderful.
And I think it's tricky.
Absolutely.
I just want to chime and say that a lot of the stuff that relates to spirituality and ancient knowledge and then the modern physics is like a lot of it comes to semantics and to what words you're using to mean what concept, right? So if you redefine certain concepts, or if you very specifically clarify what you mean when you say certain things, then it starts to tie together. You're like, what if this very abstract spiritual concept was actually describing something specific in physics, but obviously the scientific method hadn't even been invented yet, never mind physics, right? So like, what are you calling these things? Like, what do you mean consciousness? What do you mean Akashic record? You know, what do you mean by these various things? So if you start to substitute some words for certain things, a lot of stuff starts to make sense. And, you know, it's up for debate what certain things mean. Like Nassim is famous for saying, what do you mean a dimension, right? What's a dimension in the first place, right? Because if we're wrong about the dimensions, then no wonder we're like having a hard time finding 95% of the mass of the universe right now. So it's a cascading effect. If the bottom base of your pyramid of unified field theory knowledge is not completely stable, when you try to get to the most complex stuff, the whole thing can crumble down, which is, I would argue, what happens in like the standard model with recent discoveries on muons, and they don't understand how to incorporate gravity, and they don't know where dark matter and dark energy are, and they invented a new type of matter, and it goes on to this like putting a patch on top of a patch on top of a patch until it's so complex that you're like, oh, I know, there's 11 dimensions now. And you're like, wait, what? String theorists, can you define a dimension before you start telling me there's 11 of them? So that's my
fair
rant.
enough. Yeah, I want to say one more thing, and I've got to jump off. I'm actually late for my next meeting. Unfortunately, these Q&As always happen on days that I have other scheduled stuff going on, but I wanted to just tie a bow around our awesome little debate dialogue, William, because I love having this conversation with you. And the reason I love it so much is because this is absolutely foundational to all space-time physics, is the understanding of time. And what I would say from the way the dialogue went and the different layers of it is that what we come to understand is that sort of pressure, the entangled pressure of the momentum of space-time, makes it really hard to change something that has already affected a ton of people's lives in the past. Like you can't change the traffic lights, stop the death of your family member, and affect all of those things into the present. That's blockchained into time. There's a temporal directionality to that, which is important to acknowledge and recognize. However, you can change your experience of that traffic light happening and of that car getting hit. You can change your experience of how you perceive and how you connect with that moment of that trauma, of that experience in the past. And because you are a coherent temporal timeline in yourself, the changes that you make in how you perceive the past absolutely instantaneously will travel straight through the timeline in your body and change how you feel, experience, and in fact can, I believe, actually massively morph your biology in the present moment through the ripple effect of that. So things that are within the span of your capacity to be within your own perfect temporal frame that's non-local and timeless, you know, your eternal future self and your eternal past self are all in deep direct relationship to you right now. So the things you will create in the future and the things you have experienced in the past are absolutely accessible to you as a unit of infinite eternal time. Can you shift it for everybody else? Maybe not so easily in the past, but for the future, absolutely so, because the small influence of effects you have right now ripple out and out and out and out like a butterfly wings creating a hurricane over the ocean. All right, that's all I got to say, guys. I love you. Have a great day. I wish I could stay longer. Thanks, Jeff and Lonnie, for your amazing questions. Always a pleasure. Aloha.
See you soon. Yeah, you know, that's a good point, that unified physics actually has an implication for psychology and for psychotherapy. Because if you tell us a patient, go back in time in your mind's eye, Nassim likes to explain this whole story, right? You go back in your mind's eye and you're imagining what you were taught when you were a kid or whatever, that the earth goes around the sun in a circle, and you're like, oh, I'm 20 years old or whatever, I'm going to imagine 20 circles. That's not going to bring you back to that point in time and space where you are experiencing that event, that maybe you had a traumatic event back in the past. And so imagining it going back in a spiral, the way the earth is really moving, then you can start to get back to the right place where a traumatic event happened. And like what Adam was saying, look at it from a different perspective and experience it from an angle, instead of being like, oh, I was just in the flow of this event. Like, okay, I'm going to go away from the event, look at it from the side and be like, oh, my dad was having a really hard time at that time. So no wonder he reacted in that way that really like upset me. Now I have empathy for my dad. I forgive my dad. Now I feel better right now in the present. And that's going to affect what I'm going to do in the future. So going back in time and changing your opinion about how you feel about something that happened in the past is kind of like a time travel device to change your future. And so that's very useful in terms of psychology, where you're like being taught to go back and relive and experience these things that happened to you and try to feel differently about it. It's very useful to have an appropriate sense of time and space when you're doing that. Thank you, Unified Physics.
Yeah, that's a lot of what the past life regressions were doing. People going into past life, doing the same thing, changing, going through it. And there's a lot of therapies that go back and heal the child, you know, different perspectives. So thank you, Jamie. That was very important. Yeah.
Dr. Brian Weiss has been into that for quite some years now.
Yeah.
And I remember reading one of his first books several years ago, and one individual was having so much trouble with headaches, and he'd been to different doctors and so forth. And you heard that one too, Jeffrey?
Oh yeah, I read it. And Dr. Michael Newton too is quite a lot of research in past lives, and many others. Oh,
many, but this particular instance, though, he was brought back where he was a soldier in battle, and he was captured, and he was marched down to the river and shot in the back of the head. So this individual had to recognize that and learn to forgive it. And he forgave that person. No more problems with his headaches. You know, quite often people think the past life regressions, well, was I Queen Elizabeth, or was I not Elizabeth, but some king or something? And that's not really what it's about. It can be extremely healing.
Yeah. And some people carry the information of birthmarks and scars and different things on their body from past lives, which is fascinating proof. Well, that's what that was my question, is this is the phenomena, you know, there are countless people have gone back and picked out past lives that they can give the details, where the will is, you know, and all that. So that's the phenomena that we're looking for the physics to explain. Is this is real? We know people are born and they have specific detailed information of a past life, and that's been documented by tens of thousands of cases. Maybe
the reason I say physics, you know, has come hand to hand now with spirituality, because they're researching that field. You know, what I call the quantum field, unless I'm wrong, there's no time or space. There's a field of all possibilities. everything that ever was and never, I know it's hard to comprehend, but there's no beginning, no end. To me, that makes a lot of sense. Not that I can explain it, but that gives me the answer to what God is, if you want to say it. It's right there. And now you're tapping into this, from what I understand. You're getting energy from that field. And when that happens, even according to Tesla, when science, I got that written down here someplace. It's a wonderful statement that he made back in I think it was like 1904. He said, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all previous centuries of its existence. Now, here's a most brilliant individual making that statement, 120 years ago. And I
Well,
see
we're seeing it happening right now. I mean,
Exactly.
it's certainly happening in unified physics. It's happening in the spiritual community as well. You guys are great for hanging here and going deep in this question.
That was fun.
Thank you so much. Oh, we got Inez back. I want to keep going
Infinities.
and get some more questions, but thank you guys both. I appreciate you gentlemen being on the call and carry on, keep on the investigation.
I could point out one other thing on that is that the idea of being able to go back in time and change something. There's actually a physics experiment that demonstrates this. It's called the Wheeler quantum erasure experiment. And so this was initially a Gedanken experiment proposed by John Archibald Wheeler, dealing with the effects in quantum weirdness, collapse of the wave function, how that seems to be related in some sense to the choice of the experimenter and what parameter to measure on whether or not you get a wave interference pattern or a particle acting like a particle or acting like a wave. So with the quantum erasure experiment, you can actually, the way that it's done is you set it up in such a way that the particle's emitted, and then sometime in the future, it's randomly decided how it's going to be measured. And that decision of how it's going to be measured determines whether it's going to behave like a particle or a wave. But if the experiment is set up such that the particle is already emitted, how does it know whether to behave like a particle or a wave if it's being randomly decided sometime in the future? And now this experiment has been done, and it's been done with 600-year-old particles. So using photons emitted from a star 600 light years away, the photons have traveled 600 light years. So from our frame of reference, they've been traveling for 600 years. Then you set up the experiment, decide the measurement parameter, and you can make it look, and depending on that, it looks like a particle or it looks like a wave. And one of the only ways to explain this mathematically in a rational framework is transtemporal interaction. That the choice being made now is affecting what occurred in the past.
There's interesting experiments too, I saw, William, of polarizing filters with passing photons, right? Where you go 90 degrees with a polarizing filter, you can block all the light. And so they put filters in between and like it gets lighter even though you put another filter in there. And so it's like, how do these photons decide? And it's super paradoxical. Like it doesn't make any sense, the order of these filters, and like why are certain photons passing through and why are others not passing through. It's a fascinating thing to just Google that experiment with like photons and polarizing filters. It's quite bizarre.
Yeah.
Quantum weirdness at its finest.
I remember seeing that and being pretty perplexed. Yeah.
Hey, Inez, do you have another question you want to get into? It's been a minute since you were able to chime in here. Sorry.
Yeah, yes, okay. Well, it was really interesting, the discussion. Yeah, so incarnation, so so I believe the first questions have been answered.
I have to move those.
Yeah, and then the fourth question as well. So there's question from Luke Archibald. Archibald. Archibald.
Luke's a regular.
Yeah.
He'll be on in a second. He probably will turn
Well,
his
he's got
video
two
on, knowing
questions.
Luke.
Like, yeah, he's got one concerning the white noise. So he's asking, just as white noise, which uses a frequency to counterbalance ambient noise, could we apply the same principle to neutralize the harmful effects of 5G frequency? Oh, well, this is a very interesting question. Hi, Luke.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you too. Yeah, this is a very interesting question, you know. So because of the effects of the 5G, I think we were doing some experiments at the lab at some point, and William can maybe extend further on that. For me, to be honest, I'm not sure at what point this is our negative or not for the effects of 5G. I couldn't tell for the time being, because well, from what I find and what I read, I don't know, maybe William can start with that part, and then maybe we can complement on that. What do you think, William, about that?
I'm sorry, I missed that
On
on.
5G. Yeah, because you know, we were discussing 5G not so long ago, and like you were like we were doing some experiments, you told me that it didn't seem to have a negative effect on what we were doing. Of course, this is too general, no?
Yeah, well, you know, I just some aspects on 5G. You know, this isn't a new frequency that we're being exposed to. So, you know, microwaves use 2.5 gigahertz radiation, which is not too far off from 5G. And then even cordless phones used 2.4 gigahertz radiation back in the 90s. And Wi-Fi uses 5 gigahertz radiation. And probably just about every single one of us has Wi-Fi exposure. I mean, if not in your home right now, at your coffee shop. So fifth generation wireless communication technologies, you know, the frequency range, there's some proposals on what the frequency range will be, spanning from 5 gigahertz up to, I think, like even like 90 gigahertz, something like that. But, you know, those higher frequencies are more difficult because they have more rapid absorption by the atmosphere, the water in the atmosphere. So you need a lot more relay points to maintain a signal. You know, the 5 gigahertz 5G radiation band isn't anything new. And so we have done some experiments with 5 gigahertz radiation. And it was interesting that in some of the tests, we were looking at plant growth. The plants did better up against the Wi-Fi transponder. They grew better, you know, which was not what I was expecting to see by any stretch of the imagination. You know, we were taking field measurements of the electromagnetic field strength directly up against the Wi-Fi transponder. But there's actually some precedents for this, even in the research literature that I've come across, looking at the effect of millimeter to microwave radiation wavelengths on the biological system. Actually, some of the studies that I have read saw a similar effect in that a short acute exposure to these frequencies actually has a beneficial effect on the biological system. What they were doing in vitro cell cultures, human cell cultures, exposing them to a 2.4 gigahertz frequency, all the way down to like a 60 hertz radio frequency. And what they found is that with short-term acute exposure times, the cells would upregulate healthy genes, genes involved in cellular repair and rejuvenation. These are things like glutathione, superoxide dismutase, SIRT1, DNA repair enzymes, all of these kind of things. And you know what happens when you have an upregulation of those kind of biorejuvenating and repair enzymes in the cell, it has a measurable healthier state. But that same research showed that prolonged long-term chronic exposure, all that would kind of go for a while, then hit a cliff and fall off, and the cells would be in a very bad or detrimental state. But so the question was, though, can you counteract potentially the ambient microwave frequencies with like wave constructive, or in this case, destructive wave interference? You could, but you'd have to generate 5G.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I mean, that could work though. If it had to be like unidirectional, because so you'd have it on your body, you'd need it beaming away from your body, so that and it'd have to have an adaptive modulator on it, so that it's sampling the wavelengths coming in, matching those, and doing destructive interference. That's possible, yeah.
5G hat or something like that.
5G hat. Well, you know what I'm developing though is shielding clothing, clothing that shields ambient millimeter, microwave, and radio wave frequencies. And to me, that seems like a fairly good solution, because you just have a passive material in the clothes that you wear that block the ambient radio wave frequency sources. So I actually I had the idea just for personal use, like when I'm in like an airplane, when you have like pretty high radiation exposure. I was thinking it'd be cool if I could make something that I could put like a jacket type thing on, a little cap on. not a tinfoil hat necessarily, but something to mitigate the increased radiation exposure. So there are solutions like that.
A radiation bag that you climb into in your airplane seat.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it could be, nice sleeping accoutrement, and but
give
also
it Bluetooth and an entertainment system and stuff.
We can walk in a box of mirrors. So the mirrors facing outside. So you reflect everything. You get into your mirror case, and that's it.
Right.
You can call it Faraday wave. Faraday.
It's kind of a Faraday
wear.
Yeah, and you just have some little to see your through the. Yeah, we'll have to adapt at some point.
Luke, did that answer your question?
Yes, the Faraday wear is simpler than a white noise, high amplification white noise to counter it. It would be like with wiring metal, some kind of silver. What would you use in the
Well, so you can actually get products right now that have a silver mesh. And, you can't hardly even tell that the silver mesh is there. So, it looks almost like just a regular shirt or, something to that nature. And the silver mesh does a pretty good job of attenuating ambient radio wave frequencies like 5G, 2G, cellular microwave emissions. Mine is a little bit more powerful than the silver mesh because it will incorporate in graphene. And graphene is one of the strongest EMF shielding materials known. Probably silver is the only one that's comparable to it. So those kind of products though are already available. A great application is for pregnant women to have a guard around the abdomen, to minimize the amount of radiation coming in. I think that's a really smart application of shielding equipment. But it really is though that as humans, as a society, we're just going to have to get away from this kind of use of wireless communication. It's oftentimes framed that an advanced civilization is going to be using radio waves for communication. And so, one of the consequences of that kind of perspective is that when we go looking for other intelligent civilizations around us in the galaxy, we look for radio signals. But, the fact of the matter is that advanced intelligent civilizations probably don't flood their environment with artificially sourced electromagnetic waves. And they're probably not using the relatively slow transmission of light. Especially if they're traveling, if they're an interstellar civilization capable of interstellar travel. We're already running into problems with our communications technology with how slow light is. So the geostationary satellites that are used for wireless internet connectivity, particularly in rural areas where you can't get landlines out, they're not very popular because they have a huge time delay because of it takes like 2 seconds for the light to travel to the satellite and like another 2 seconds to travel back. I don't know if it's quite that large, but even when you're talking about wireless communications technology, milliseconds and seconds start to become very detrimental in creating lag in the speed. So that's the idea of Elon Musk's Starlink, is that we have to get the satellites closer to Earth so that it doesn't take so much time for the light to travel. Just as a final point, an advanced communications technology is going to use the micro wormhole network of space for instantaneous communication. And that also happens to be the only way you can communicate across interstellar distances. So a advanced civilization that has interstellar travel is not using radio waves. The kind of over unity energy technology that's being developed here, which is coupling to the vacuum, will probably have applications in this kind of quasi-instantaneous communication that doesn't involve radio waves.
Exactly.
More telepathy over there.
And telepathy. Yeah, that's the ultimate
Yeah, light is pretty slow. I mean, we think of it as the speed limit of the universe, but it obviously can't really be, or else how is the universe keeping track of itself at all scales, from the quantum to the cosmological? It's got to be able to talk to itself instantaneously. And that's quantum wormhole and macro wormhole, right? It's scalar, it's holographic. So there's big black holes and there's small black holes, and they're all nested inside of each other infinitely. Makes a lot more sense than like, oh, let's go to the other side of the galaxy. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. I'm going to go at the speed of light. I'll be back in 300,000 years because it's 150,000 light years in each direction. You're not going to the other side of the galaxy to do anything and coming back at light speed. Like,
No way.
Well, you can go, it's a one-way trip though. Yeah.
Because it spins around, you come back.
Because of time dilation.
Oh, right. Time dilation.
So if you go at the speed of light, you can make that distance actually at like almost any arbitrarily small unit of time. But the problem is that if you think that you're going back, 300,000 years have passed.
Right.
Even if it might have only been, you can go almost as far into the time dilation dimension as you want. So say it's like a day for you. 300,000 years have passed back where you're at. That's not really practical either.
Right. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
So we got to start to figure out how we're going to get into those wormholes, because if you can get into the wormhole network, you can pop out theoretically anywhere you want. So it's awfully convenient.
Yeah.
Luke, you had two questions. You might as well ask the second question while you're here. Right?
Sure. It was about yeah, sometimes we see in quantum physics, they say we're made of photons. I'm more familiar with the PSU that uses the photon as a measurement, as a speed, and it's,
For those watching, he's asking about that usually we're made of photons, but usually in this community, we talk about PSUs, which are Planck spherical units, which is an incredibly small oscillator that Adam was mentioning. There's 10 to the 60 of those little oscillators inside of a single proton. So the question is, are we made of Plancks, or are we made of photons, right?
Yeah.
Or are we made of both? Or, how do you describe the differentiation between those? Right. I don't know, Inez, that sounds like an Inez question.
Yeah. Okay. So this is very interesting because each PSU is an electromagnetic fluctuation, and so it is in a certain sense quantized as a photon as well. Okay. So the thing is here that if you have a propagating vibration, which is a vibration which is propagating in a medium, that's when you will say it's a photon. But when it is collectively spiraling, like in a collective behavior, like that's when it becomes like a confined vibration that we call matter, mass, particles, and all that. So even though they're both vibrations, the fact that you have a wave which is propagating freely in, let's say, in any direction, that's when you would use the term like photon, and that's the propagating vibration. And the confined vibration is what you would call, but they're all PSUs at the end. No, these are all PSUs at the end. You just depends on the, let's say, the frame you're using. So if you're talking about confined vibration, you would mainly say, well, you could say that's confined, that's a vibration, which is that's why they say we are light, because that everything is vibration. So if we are vibration in a confined volume, then you say it's a potential, it's a vibration that can be potentially propagating when reaching the speed of light. That's why you have the speed of light between, let's say, propagating vibration and mass. So that would be the speed of light. It's like the boundary condition between one or the other. So that would be the difference, let's say.
Okay, so both are just from a different point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could say that the photon is as well having this double torus dynamics. It is quantized like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I think I would have to leave now. Yep. You're muted, Jamie.
Thanks, Inez. It's always good to
Yeah.
see you. Thanks for being here.
So see you soon. A la
Yep. Send my love to the gang at Taurus Tech.
Yeah, sure, for sure. Bye-bye.
Bye. So William, we're down to, maybe we could do one more question or something. Is there anything that grabs you?
Yeah. I could definitely take another question. And then, maybe mention a little bit about the Big Questions 2 course.
Oh yeah, when is that?
It's coming out. We have some tentative plans for when it's going to launch. Those are still kind of evolving, so I don't know if I can give a definite date at this time, but it's definitely in the works. Let's see. Big Questions 2 course.
Excellent.
Coming soon. This is going to be going more into the higher derived levels of physics. So the Big Questions course 1. Let's see this quote by Carl Sagan: "A blade of grass is a commonplace on Earth. It would be a miracle on Mars. Our descendants on Mars will know the value of a patch of green. And if a blade of grass is priceless, what is the value of a human being?" Big Questions course 1 was kind of starting out on a more foundational level, looking at big questions in cosmology, cosmogenesis. Where did everything come from? Where did the universe come from? What is everything made of? And actually, we also addressed a little bit some teleological questions like, is there a direction to how, this cosmological thing is evolving? Does it have a directionality, perhaps even purpose? Those kind of questions. And then, it started to get into the more intricate dynamics of the unified space memory network, then how that starts to, how we can start to delineate that system and describe consciousness and awareness, which links to how systems in the universe in general, physical systems in general, can make that kind of evolutionary transition to living systems, life and biology. It involves the sentient awareness, consciousness dynamics of that unified space memory network. And that's kind of where Big Questions is level 1, that was its scope. So now we're going to kind of pick up on that in Big Questions 2 and go and continue on down that path of questioning, okay, then what is life? What does it mean to be alive? How do you define the living system as opposed to a abiotic system? So then what is biology? How do we define that? Can you make a synthetic biological system? Would that be alive and living? And then also similarly, can you make it aware, conscious? Would that be conscious? Would it have a soul? These kind of questions. So what is it to be human? What does that mean? How does that play into the larger perspective of the universe as a whole, and what the universe is doing and how it's evolving in time? It should be pretty exciting. And then of course, it's going to be incorporating a lot of the new discoveries being made by Nassim and Dr. Oliveriot. You know, I think the biophysics are going to have a lot more detail in them to enhance this kind of understanding.
Awesome, William. People are really looking forward to it. They're asking when it's coming. I know you don't know exactly when, but it should be, you know, in the next coming months, right? It's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of already past due, but you know, we had so many fantastic researchers that had courses, and so we were like, let's get these out, you know, and so uh, now that those have launched, I'm gonna come back into the queue, and we're gonna
Great.
get the questions too out. Yeah, so
Excellent.
in the coming months, yeah.
I just put a link to your course, you know, Big Questions 1 into the chat of both Facebook and Zoom. So you guys can check out more information about that course. Super fascinating stuff. And I look forward to that next course. We also have a course coming from Alan Green, who is a fascinating researcher because he's tying together ancient information having to do with the Great Pyramid and Shakespeare. The William Shakespeare's works have been encoded mathematically, and it's fascinating how you know, how accurate these encodings are and how brilliant Alan is at pattern recognition and finding these things. And as well, we have some great new courses that just came out. You can check them all out in the courses tab of resonancescience.org. And we also just released the Resonance Talks, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. Just search Resonance Science Foundation on YouTube. I think we should just wrap it. It seems like this is the spot. It's really, you know, an honor to be here and help facilitate these things. You know, I've been following this work for a long time. It's exciting to see where everything's coming. And you guys, for William to say at the beginning of this call that he just met with Nassim and Olivier, and they went over the details of his paper. William knows the significance of this work really well. So when he says it was like one of the most exciting things he's ever seen, I know that's super huge, because William's the kind of guy who, like, when he was in college was like, oh, I think I figured out where the human genome was genetically modified, you know, like this big stuff, you know. So it's not a small statement for William to say how excited he was. So I can't wait to find out those details. I know everybody's wondering, everybody asked Nassim too, when's your paper coming out? And it's kind of like, you're like, hi, I'm trying to solve the most difficult, most challenging, most complex problem in the history of science. When is that done? Can you please just post that right now? It takes a minute, you know, just even Nassim getting to this point in a lifetime is really fast, you know, like science doesn't always move that quickly. So,
you know, because I've been watching them work on it. And so now seeing what they've done during that time, I'm absolutely astounded what they were able to accomplish in that amount of time that they were working on it. Because I mean, this opus is like something that would take a normal person a decade or two to do. I'm not even exaggerating. It's like I can't even imagine the kind of energy they must have been working with to produce this work in the amount of time that they did. So. Yeah.
So all this stuff is coming, you guys. It's going to be an exciting year between the module 7 and module 8 coming out on the free course. So anybody hearing my voice that is curious about any of the things that you just heard, go to resonancescience.org and check out this free course. It's Nassim's life's work. William and all the rest of the researchers have all contributed. And it's great. You can share that with your friends and go deep into that. It has like the history of physics in there and all kinds of stuff. So dig into that. I also have a course on ancient Egypt. If anybody's interested in Egypt, going deep into like all these anomalies in the physics that you witness on display on the Giza Plateau. Like, how did they make this? This doesn't make any sense. I don't think that they were dragging these things with ropes. So how did they do it? That's what we look into in that course. But again, you know, thanks you guys for being here and supporting the work of the foundation and Nassim Haramein and all the researchers. And we'll see you on the next one. We do these calls on the third Wednesday of every month, and we do live with Nassim, where you get to ask Nassim Haramein, our director of research, questions on the first Wednesday of each month. And then on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month, we do breakout groups here in the Resonance Academy, which is where participants get to hang out and talk to each other. And it's people from all over the world. And it's great because it's private and you can talk about any topic in closed Zoom rooms. So join us in the contributing members of Resonance Science Foundation. It's a whopping $5 a month, you guys, to help support this foundation and keep the science going. Because if you can unify science, you can probably unify everything. And boy, does the earth need that right now. So William, you want to just say a closing goodbye?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining us and giving such wonderful, insightful questions. You know, it's what makes these sessions so great, and you know, just expands the realm of thought for everybody involved. You know, panelists and participants included, I think. So thank you for joining and submitting those excellent questions. And thank you, Jamie, for facilitating this discussion. I know you kind of were thrown on the spot kind of on relatively short notice, but there's no doubt that you're always a great mediator for tying these conversations together and keeping the discussion flowing. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
And I definitely look forward to having y'all all join us next time and more awesome unified physics, unified science discussions.
Right on. And as Nassim would say, may the vacuum be with you.